Okay, guys, I'm going to be showing you the difference between the normal dolls that I make. As you see, they're hard vinyl, um, and a full body silicone doll. As most of you have seen my work in progress, the painting of these dolls are completely different, as silicone only attaches to silicone. So this little guy here is actually going to be the first silicone doll that I paint, and I have to use a rather expensive silicone paint to keep the pigment on the baby. Um, but one of the things that you can describe but can't really um, get across to people is the difference in the way that silicone feels versus the vinyl, because they all just kind of look the same in pictures. Um, this little guy is EcoFlex 20, so he's not the softest silicone. As you can see, he's squishy, but his core is a little more solid, um, and he's got a little more substance to him. Um, but as you can see, the way they move, they're a little jiggly. Um, the parts that aren't as dense, like his midsection, his hands are soft and really squishy. Um, right now he's really sticky. He needs a layer of matting after I do his painting. As you can see, some of his original painting, because he was an edition from, if I'm correct, 2010. So he's pretty old as far as dolls go, and obviously well loved. So um, unfortunately, over time, the silicone paint can rub off and peel if it's not applied just so. So you can see that his little nails, and unfortunately, silicone without the matting can be really sticky, tacky, like if you remember the little sticky hands that you used to get out of the little coin machines when we were kids. That's exactly how sticky and tacky he is. And unfortunately, one of the things that I'm really super afraid of when painting him is the fact that if any little piece of hair or fuzz gets on him when I apply the silicone paint, it's going to be forever stuck in him if it dries. So I have to paint literally one side of him, let it cure, and then flip him over and do another layer. And these have to dry for about an hour to 2 hours in between layers. And as you guys have noticed in some of my work in progress pictures of the vinyl, they go on very, very thin. So this is going to take me quite some time. So as you can see, he's got all the little baby rolls, and the movement is, with the EcoFlex 20, it's a little softer than the 30. The movement isn't as jiggly, if that makes any sense. The tougher the silicone, the quicker the jiggle is. I'll put it that way. So he's got, his movements are a little slower, as opposed to being super bouncy. And then that's how he moves. He's super soft as far as how his skin feels. It feels almost like sticky human skin. One of the other differences, if you can see here, is he takes an actual pacifier. As I've described before to you guys, my vinyl dolls, if they don't have a partially open mouth where I have to cut the nipple off to fit into the partially open mouth, I completely remove the whole thing and insert a magnet inside of their head, and one on the other end of the pacifier, so that it's attached magnetically and there is no actual nipple attached to the pacifier then. But with silicone, again, this is squishy and it's solid, so there is no empty head or hollow limbs that I have to fill up with glass bead. And then as far as pacifiers go, I just opened his mouth because when I got him, his mouth was still not quite opened all the way on the corners, and it was extremely shallow, maybe this part of my finger depth, which is not big enough for any kind of a pacifier to fit in. It was also too narrow for an actual pacifier nipple to fit in. So what I did was I took an X-Acto knife and I very carefully went along the lines and the creases of the mouth and opened up his mouth. So as you can see there, there's like paint missing, but that's where I opened it. And once my paint comes in, I will be able to repair all of the exposed raw silicone and then color it, and he will be just fine. I also opened the back of his mouth up, allowing for, as you can see, a full pacifier. So he takes a full pacifier now, which is great. And once I get the paint done, you won't be able to tell that his mouth has been opened because it's now able to take a full pacifier, which is a benefit. Then you don't have to worry about cutting up the pacifiers, and basically any newborn pacifier teat will fit. So that's some of the differences in silicone versus vinyl. This little guy is actually poured. He's very heavy. Silicone is extremely heavy. See, I told you, everything sticks to it. Silicone is extremely heavy. This little guy actually weighs 9 pounds, which is kind of one of the only reasons that I would consider selling him after he's painted, because he gets very, very heavy, very, very fast. But as you can see, his painting is kind of worn down. It's a little, there's a lot of brown color in him. And I think that this was an attempt at modeling, as you can see on the head. But unfortunately, he just looks like a cheetah because of the fact that a lot of the red tones that he had originally on him, as you can see here from veining and shading, have rubbed off. So he will definitely look like a different baby once I'm done painting him. Hopefully that's not a bad thing, because like I said, it's a completely different process in painting. Luckily the application is pretty similar, so I shouldn't have a problem with that. It's just making sure that the amounts of silicone are exact when I'm pouring part A and part B and adding the pigment, because if they're not exact, the silicone won't set and it will either peel off or just be extremely sticky throughout the whole time. His little legs and his feet, as you can see, unfortunately, unlike my vinyl where I can just take some chemicals and strip the vinyl, I cannot do that with silicone. Silicone is stuck to itself. The pigments are there. One of the things that I can do to ease up some of the darkest spots is I can I can use a emery board and very gently kind of file away some of the pigment. But the detail is great. And he doesn't have any flaws as far as being ripped anywhere or damaged as he's pulled out of the mold, because when you pull the silicone baby out of the mold after the silicone has set, it then becomes extremely difficult to pull him out, as sticky as they are, and as narrow as some of the areas are, like the ankles and the wrists, which is why oftentimes you'll see a lot of these babies don't have a narrow wrist, because the artists are oftentimes afraid to make these too small, and when they're trying to pull the hand out, which is significantly wider, sometimes it rips at the wrists and fingers will get left behind, which have to be then reapplied later and adhered using silicone. But this little guy came out of his mold just perfect. He's got this little newborn belly button, which again will be given careful detail and consideration once I have him. Another feature of these little guys is the fact that, generally speaking, unlike my vinyl dolls, and I'm going to warn you, there are boy parts here. Unlike my vinyl dolls, which are very gender neutral, generally unless you have a belly plate, which is gendered by boy or girl, you can just change their gender by changing their outfit. With these little guys, every little detail is not forgotten. So part of the realism in just their sculpts are the fact that they are anatomically correct and every little detail is seen to. But it's truly a work of art because these dolls are sculpted in clay and then creating a mold, then poured and painted, which is just incredible if you think about all the little details that go into things like the little creases in the feet and in the legs. And I'm going to cover his boy bits up because when I stop the video, it's going to show the tail end of the video, and the last thing I want is to be flagged on Facebook for little boy bits that are actually just a doll. So now that you've seen kind of how the movement is, the detail that goes into the silicone, and just how soft and squishy they are, it gives you an idea of the difference if you have never seen or felt a full body silicone doll versus the vinyl. It just gives you guys an idea of the difference between the silicone and vinyl. And you also now know the difference in the painting process, which I am very, very nervous about, because once it's there, it's there. So if you stay tuned, I will be posting work in progress photos, and once he's all finished, there will be a video showing all of his detail when he's all painted and finished. So this is little baby Beny is his kit name, and he is well on his way to being a brand new baby, all painted, and he will also be rooted with super sweet, soft brown mohair. Silicone rooting is super easy, it's super fast, and it looks just amazing. The only problem with silicone rooting is, unlike the vinyl, which is hollow in the middle, silicone, like I said, it's solid, so there's no way to seal the hair in and glue it in. That means that you have to be extremely careful when brushing the hair, washing it, or messing with it in general, because it will just slide out, and that requires a reroot. So now that you've seen him in his before video and you've seen his movements, just keep an eye out for his progress, and we will be showing pictures soon.